Let's start with the obligatory Brandon Aiyuk trade updates because we have to. I know everyone wants to say, oh, I'm so sick of hearing of this Aiyuk stuff. Wake me up when the trade actually happens. This is getting so annoying. This is making me nauseous. Oh my God, enough of Aiyuk. But at the same time, let's be real. What have we been spending our time doing these last 2 or 3 days? Actions speak louder than words. Talk is cheap. We've been refreshing Twitter, scrolling the internet, trying to get any little piece of information we can on Brandon Aiyuk becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler. So I get we can all say we're sick of talking about it, we're sick of hearing about it. And I'd be in that boat too. I'm like, come on, let's just get this deal done. What's the holdup? But at the same time, we can't help ourselves. So let's talk more Brandon Aiyuk. And around this point yesterday, maybe a little bit later, was it around 3 or 4 o'clock? No, it was probably around this time. Brandon Aiyuk was a Steeler. At least there was a verbal agreement in place, according to Andrew Filipponi. Said the Steelers have a verbal agreement with the Niners for Brandon Aiyuk. All the terms of the deal, the contract details are being hammered out now. The wide receiver is coming to Pittsburgh. We all celebrated. Until you had reports like this coming from Jordan Schultz saying there's no deal between the Niners and Steelers on a trade that would send Aiyuk to Pittsburgh. Per multiple sources, the two sides have spoken, they continue to speak, and the situation remains very fluid. But as of this post, there's no agreement on all sides. We also had Jerry Dulac from the Pittsburgh side of things agreeing with Schultz and saying the Steelers have no verbal agreement in place with the Niners for Brandon Aiyuk and are not in the process of hammering out final details per sources. And any potential deal would not involve the Steelers giving up a player. All right, so at least we got some new information from Dulac there. Steelers are not trying to give up Pickens, Freiermuth, but I guess you could even include some of the other names that have been thrown in there. Dan Moore, James Daniel, Calvin Austin. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, if it's any of those 3 players I mentioned in the latter portion there, you know, Calvin Austin and James Daniel or Dan Moore, I think we should be willing to part ways with if it means getting a Brandon Aiyuk. Definitely not Pickens, definitely not Freiermuth, but we still got to wait and see. If this deal does happen, we got to find out the details of the trade. Like, if it's just a couple picks, okay, maybe we didn't need to give up a player. But if Brandon Aiyuk ends up staying with the 49ers or goes elsewhere, and all it took was us to give up a Dan Moore or Calvin Austin, then I wouldn't be too thrilled. Definitely would not be too thrilled about that. But some other reports came out since then. Adam Schefter saying that the Niners are now in no rush to trade Brandon Aiyuk.
A lot of people around the league believe that the 49ers are not going to be in any rush here to make a move, despite the fact that everybody's waiting for a breathless update, waiting to see when and if Brandon Aiyuk will be traded. He might be, and he might be soon, but they are not rushing into anything right now. They're going to take their time, be deliberate, and see what's out there before they make any move at all, because they do know that they would be moving on from a very good wide receiver.
This morning I saw from CBS that the Steelers are still the leaders in the clubhouse, that this deal is just a matter of when, not if. It's all signs pointing to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
JJ, what's the latest on Aiyuk on the trade block?
We're all waiting for Brandon Aiyuk to ultimately become a Pittsburgh Steeler. The Steelers are by far the leader in the clubhouse. Why are they the leader in the clubhouse? Because that's where Brandon Aiyuk ultimately wants to go.
I've also seen the 49ers could be looking to add a third team into the deal, because if Jerry Dulac, what he's saying is true, and the Steelers don't want to give up a player, the Niners are still trying to find some sort of player replacement for Aiyuk. I don't think it necessarily has to be a receiver for a receiver, but just another guy that they could add for the team that could help them this year. So they might be looking for an additional squad to get in on this. AB, CTSPN is saying just have patience, because this deal is going to happen with the Steelers after the first preseason game. So that's where we're at, man. Maybe we should just shut up about it. Maybe that's what it's going to take, because it seems like any time a report comes out that the deal is done, we got other people coming out and backtracking and saying or refuting those reports, saying, no, it's not close to being done. Don't listen to what you hear on the internet. So maybe a bunch of reporters, a bunch of people that are covering this, should just be quiet. We should wait. And maybe us too. Maybe we should just shut off our phones, shut up, don't say Brandon Aiyuk's name for the next 24, 48 hours, and we're going to wake up in a few days and Brandon Aiyuk will be a Steeler. Maybe that's what it's going to take. Because I hope I didn't jinx it by how I was acting these last couple videos and basically guaranteeing that Aiyuk was going to be a Steeler. I was 100% sure. I'm still not far off from that. I'm about 99.5% sure. It's just that this thing's been dragging, and then you start thinking, oh, wait, was I wrong? Were all these reports wrong that are saying the deal's done? Even though everything still makes so much sense. Everything points to Aiyuk becoming a Steeler. Everything does. Could we have been wrong? Should we start to second guess ourselves? I still think it's happening, but this is where we're at most recently, I guess, with the reports and information. No verbal agreement was in place. Steelers are still talking. Steelers are still the leader in the clubhouse. The package that the Steelers are offering isn't exactly what the 49ers want, but Brandon Aiyuk doesn't want to go anywhere else. Could the Niners get back in the mix and offer Aiyuk a better contract? And would he maybe be willing to stay with the 49ers after all this mess that's taken place in the offseason? That's where we're at. Now let's get to Steelers preseason game because we play football tomorrow against the Houston Texans at home, 7 o'clock. Excited for this. I think a lot of us are excited for this. We obviously talked about yesterday there's going to be 7 veterans that are resting, 2 on the offensive side, Russell Wilson, Isaiah Malu, and then on defense, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Cam Hayward. Good. Yeah, I don't need to see any of them. I said that yesterday. Feel the same way today. So let's go over players to watch for, key matchups to watch for. I probably got around 5 or 6 key things I wanted to bring up. And then we'll look at the spread, the money line, and that type of stuff to close it out. So Justin Fields, first name we got to bring up for tomorrow. This is his chance to increase the heat on this quote-unquote quarterback competition. My money is on Tomlin is just going to start Russell Wilson week 1. Even though he says this is a legitimate quarterback competition, he said it yesterday.
Would you still categorize this as a quarterback competition? If it is, how do you weight what happens on the practice field here versus what happens in a stadium?
Very much is a competition. What happens in stadium is weighted heavier than what happens in a practice setting because it's more game-like.
I don't think I'm buying it. Now, Fields could heat things up, though. If he goes out, plays a couple series, does the Kenny Pickett from last year where, what was it? Every drive Kenny Pickett was in, the first team offense was in, we scored a touchdown. We were 5 for 5 in those 3 preseason games. So if Justin Fields starts to get on that pace tomorrow, first 2 drives, get some rushing yards in there, wows us with a nice throw to Pickens down the field, we get two touchdowns in 2 series, offense is humming. Okay, opens the door up a little bit more for him to potentially be the QB1. In my eyes, and probably a bunch of fans' eyes, and all the people's eyes that are watching the damn games, but I still don't know what Tomlin's thinking. Does he have that much respect for Russ that even if Russ sits out for most of this preseason and is limited for most of this preseason, that no matter what, he's going to start in week 1? That's what my gut's telling me. That's the way I think he's leaning, but Justin Fields, this is his opportunity to open the door even more and maybe have Tomlin forget about Russ being QB1 for this 2024 season to at least start off. Van Jefferson, with all this Aiyuk talk, he's been looking good in training camp. Can he replicate this on the actual football field for an actual game. I know it's preseason game, but still, this is a step up. Tomlin even says that these preseason games are going to be weighted a little bit more than anything these players do at training camp or at practice, because it is when the lights are on and it means a little bit more, even though it is preseason. So Van Jefferson, show us that we don't need a Brandon Aiyuk. Replicate some of this route running and separation that you've been putting on display in training camp and be a target for Justin Fields to get the ball to. And you're going to be going up against most likely some decent corners, because it says the Texans are going to be playing their starters for a couple series. So you got Derek Stingley, maybe a Jeff Okudah. I think they drafted a guy. Yeah, they drafted Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia. So you're going to have some decent matchups early on. Win those and get open for Fields and make some plays. Make it more of a conversation. Actually, in a way, too, if you do good, you would be helping the Steelers leverage in the Aiyuk trades a little bit, because the Steelers would look at themselves or say to the 49ers, you know what? Yeah, Van Jefferson at wide receiver too. We can deal with that. We don't need to up our offer. So in a way, you could be you could be helping yourself out, but you also could be helping the Steelers in getting Brandon Aiyuk, at least give up less compensation to get Aiyuk in here. Catch-22 situation. Next matchup is Nick Herbig, because Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, they're going to be out of this game. So Herbig is going to be our starting edge rusher. Him alongside, I believe, Kyron Johnson, Marcus Golden should get out there. Maybe Marcus Golden will get out there a decent amount. He's not one of the veterans we said we're going to rest. He's new to the team, at least for this offseason. I know we had him around last year. But, yeah, I guess Marcus Golden should get some time just to get back up to speed here. But Herbig, we're talking about you being next up in this edge rush room. We got our top two guys in TJ Watt and Highsmith. Year two, Herbig. What's that look like? You're going up against some decent offensive tackles here. Laramie Tunsil. I don't know if we're going to have you over in TJ's spot going up against the right tackle, but we know you have versatility. So if we do see you up against Laramie Tunsil, what does that look like? Show us that you are ready to take that next step. Maybe potentially ready to take some snaps from an Alex Highsmith or a TJ Watt on a regular basis during the regular season. Everyone's been talking him up. I mean, he's been having a great offseason, great training camp. Said the same things last year. We know he balled out in preseason. He did good in the regular season when he got time. Now it's just, hey, are you ready to take that next step? What does it look like against a top 5 offensive tackle like a Laramie Tunsil? And then we got Peyton Wilson. Patrick Queen's going to be out. So he's going to be starting. Cole Holcomb, he's on the PUP list. It's going to be Peyton Wilson and Landon Roberts out there. How do you look against a Dalton Schultz, who's a legitimate top 10 tight end in this league? Or versus a Joe Mixon, who is, I don't know where he's at, but he's been perennially a top 10 running back. But like right now, is he top 15, top 20? I don't know. He's up there. He's still up. It's still Joe Mixon. So, Peyton Wilson, get that athleticism on display. Let's see what you look like in coverage. Let's see what you look like when they hand the ball off to a Joe Mixon. Are you able to get downfield? Are you able to get in the backfield? I expect him to be able to do that. I mean, all we've been hearing is good things coming out of training camp with a Peyton Wilson, but now we get to see it up against almost like a Nick Herbig. Like Nick Herbig, what does it look like against this top 5 offensive tackle? Peyton Wilson, what's it look like against a top 10 tight end? Like a legit, Dalton Schultz is a damn good player. Joe Mixon, damn good player. Okay. Can you hold your own? And then I got our cornerbacks versus the Texans receivers. We know the Texans got Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins. I don't know if Tank Dell's going to play. I still think he's recovering from injury. But then you also got Mechie. So Joey Porter Jr., I'm not as concerned with him. Joey Porter Jr., though, we got Dante Jackson. But then I'm more looking towards like the next guys, like a Beanie Bishop, like a Corey Trice, like a Darius Rush. I don't know if they're going to be out there versus those Texans receivers early on, because Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson aren't guys that we're going to be giving veteran rest. But I'm more intrigued because we know who Joey Porter Jr., we know Dante Jackson. I guess it would be nice to see Dante Jackson in a Steeler uniform for the first time. But, like, we know what those guys are. I want to see if, like, Corey Trice, Beanie Bishop, or Darius Rush is, like, up for the occasion. And, unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to get to see those matchups against a Diggs or against a Nico Collins. Hopefully we do, though. Hopefully we could get at least one of them out there early on, because we'll probably have some formations where there's more than 2 cornerbacks out there, most likely. I mean, it is the NFL in 2024. There's a lot of nickel formations being played on defenses, particularly the Steelers. So hopefully we do get a Beanie Bishop versus Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs or a Corey Trice against one of those guys. If not, I'm still excited to see them. I'm still excited to see if they can hold their own against whoever the Texans are throwing out there to line up against them. Last thing in terms of matchups, O-line, Steelers O-line versus Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. We'll just say the new players on or the young players on the O-line, like a Zach Frazier, Troy Fautanu, and then obviously Broderick Jones on the left side. I mean, it looks like Dan Moore's going to be starting at left tackle. Broderick Jones will probably be at right, but at some point in the game, I got to assume we're going to bump Broderick over to left and then Fautanu to right. And Zach Frazier's going to be getting in there, although we're most likely going to be starting Herbig at center. But Texans, like defensive line, their pressure on the D-line and everything. Interior, yeah, not as good as their edge rushers in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. So, like, that's the more exciting matchup. Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter against the tackles, against a Fautanu or against a Broderick Jones. But then, yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing what Zach Frazier can do. Really, or Mason McCormick too. I'm excited to see what he can do. He might get some decent PT because we're benching Isaac Seumalo to start the game. I don't know. It's probably going to go to Spencer Anderson early on, but Mason McCormick will probably get a decent amount of PT. I think in general, yeah, I think going up against the Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, that'll be cool. It's a cool matchup. But I also just think the offensive line is overall an intriguing storyline coming into this preseason game 1 because of all these young players, all these guys that could potentially be franchise staples for us. We know Broderick Jones and Fautanu and Frazier, like they're gonna be around here for a long time. But how ready are they now? And then you look at guys like a Spencer Anderson or a Mason McCormick, like, could they do something? Can they make some of these guards, these older guards like a James Daniel or an Isaac Seumalo, expendable? Not necessarily for this season, although we have talked about James Daniel in this Brandon Aiyuk trade, but coming up here, man, like, would we be willing to start one of those dudes potentially in 2025? I guess Kendrick Green too. You got that storyline. Revenge game. Let's see how he looks against. He's listed as their backup. He's probably going to be going up against like DeMarvin Leal. Maybe Keanu Benton. Maybe we keep Keanu Benton in there for a little bit. Although with Cam Hayward out, maybe Benton's only 2 or 3 series, and then he's out of the game. So yeah, it'd be DeMarvin Leal and like Loudermilk, Logan Lee. That's who Kendrick Green could be going up against. But the spread for the game: Steelers plus 2.5. Money line plus 120. I got a lot of my cash wrapped up in this USA Basketball Olympics. Got a fair amount. So I might have to deposit some new money to place a bet here, but I'm going to take one of these. I'm leaning just plus 120. Steelers went 3-0 in the preseason last year. We've been doing pretty good in the preseason. Like, we got good depth to this team. So I expect at home for us to get the job done. But that's it for today's edition of Big Deke News on a Thursday. Brandon Aiyuk, not a Steeler yet officially, but I still think it's going to happen. Steelers Texans tomorrow. I'm excited. And I think I'm going to try to live stream at some point tomorrow before the game. And then I'm definitely going to be live after the game over on Bleach Report. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you guys know. I'll keep you updated. But again, hope you enjoyed today's show. Stay chilling and peace.